Hello and welcome to Amanda's Wellbeing Podcast, a podcast where we discuss all things relating to your well-being, ranging from nutrition to physical and mental health. I am Amanda Hayes, your host, a nutritionist with a passion for well-being. Today I am here with Margaret Boylan. Margaret has had an interesting and varied working life. She holds a degree in psychology and in law and a master's in professional ethics. Margaret practiced as a lawyer for 23 years in the Commonwealth Public Service, including working as Deputy General Counsel, Administrative Law at the Department of Human Services. For those of you who are not familiar with the legal profession, administrative law is concerned with the regulation of government decision making, and to be frank, it attracts the brainy people. Margaret is now a qualified cycling coach and a strength and conditioning coach. Since 2014, she has run her own coaching business, First Principles Coaching, and we'll hear today about what being a cycling coach entails and what led Margaret to change her career. So hello, Margaret, and welcome to Amanda's Wellbeing Podcast.
Hello, Amanda, and thank you very much for your welcome.
I'd like to start our discussion by delving into your coaching business. You are an accredited Level 1 cycling coach. How do you qualify to become a coach?
Well, there is a qualification or accreditation process, which started for me, as it does for everybody, in doing a entry level, which is a road and track skills coaching course. I did that in 2014. And I followed it up fairly quickly with the next level up, which is a level 1, all done through Cycling Australia. And Cycling Australia works under the National Accreditation Coaching Scheme, which covers all forms of skills and expertise in the coaching world. Yeah.
Okay, so for anyone who's interested, I will put that information up in the show notes. So Margaret, who are your usual or typical clients?
Well, most of my work is done through Cycling Australia. I have, since 2014, done lots of work in the She Rides program, which is a Australian Sports Commission program through Cycling Australia about participation for women.
Great.
In the cycling world at all levels, from the most basic, and there's actually a program called Basic for people who want to ride, don't really know where to start. It's a one-on-one. Then there's a program called Confidence, which is about people who can ride, do ride, but need confidence to do it in a group. Together is the next one, which is a little bit further, a little bit faster, a little bit harder.
Great.
And then in the last couple of years, I've run something called She Rides On, which is more group riding for women to do even more riding at a higher level.
Yeah. So do women graduate from one level to the next?
They do.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And it's possible to come in at a level if you've got pre-existing skill and experience.
Yeah. I think that's great, because one thing I've noticed just personally riding around is that cycling seems to be a male-dominated sport. You always see huge packs of men out there. And I would say the same about triathlon. I did a triathlon on the weekend, and in the distance that I did, there were 130 men competing and only 50 women. So I think it's great to have a space for women where they feel safe and supported. Yes.
I agree.
Yeah. The other thing you do is strength and conditioning coaching. You have accreditation in that as well. So how do those two coaching roles complement each other?
Yep. Well, they've kind of run side by side, really, for some years, because I first qualified as a personal trainer through a private fitness place in 2014. And then I followed that up by qualifying under the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association. Again, they work in the National Coaching Scheme. In 2015 as a strength and conditioning coach. The difference being that strength and conditioning coaches are more about performance, so helping people get fitter to provide them with ability to perform or achieve something, whereas personal trainers are about fitness and well-being, which is beautiful, but not always focused on an event or a goal. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I was never fully aware of the difference. And do you find you have a lot of clients who cross over between the strength and conditioning and cycling?
Well, actually, it probably goes for me the other way. More, they start as cyclists
Yes.
and decide and realise, and this probably goes back to the question that I didn't answer properly about how they complement each other, because there is a really strong connection between off-bike strength and conditioning work and cycling performance.
Yeah.
And not performance necessarily to win races or anything, but just performance to be comfortable and use your body to its best.
Yes.
And avoid injury every time you ride. So very basic strength and stretching can make a big difference. So they're very complementary. And as a coach, I find my clients do benefit from that. That's the feedback I get.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. I was chatting to Margaret before we went on air and said that I get quite a sore back, so I need to work on my core.
Yes, indeed.
So, Margaret, you spend a lot of time helping other people achieve their cycling dreams. So what are your cycling goals and dreams?
Yes, well, I do a bit of cycling racing, masters racing. I'm 61 years old.
Oh, wow.
I know, unbelievably. And I've been racing for some time now. My main focus in racing is time trialling, which is partly, I guess, because it can be fitted into my life.
Yes.
Time trialling is 20 kilometres,
Right.
basically, as far as you can go. So you can train to do 20 kilometres in amongst all the other stuff I do.
Okay. And is the time trial course a flat course normally?
Not always.
Not always.
No. So happily, hill climbing is another really big interest I have, partly because I live in a very hilly part of Adelaide. But I find it very satisfying and enjoyable. And I really enjoy helping women get their confidence and skill in climbing, because there's so much bang for your buck in climbing.
Yes. I mean, it can be really daunting, I think, looking up at a big hill thinking, oh, am I going to make it or am I going to fall off?
Yeah, that's right. Once you learn how to use your bike well and your body well and smile, it works.
Yeah, and then you get the benefit, of course, of the descent.
Correct.
So how much time do you spend on your bike each week?
Well, I've not really added up, but I know from kilometres, basically. I probably do, well, I have a plan, so I don't do the same amount every week.
Yes.
And I don't, not just time and distance, I don't do the same amount of intensity every week.
Yeah.
But if we just talk about time, I probably do 10 to 20 hours a week, depending on what I've got on.
Yes, and some of that I assume would be your, as a coach?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And some of my coaching work is done off the bike as well. Yeah. So, yeah.
How do you find clients? Are they referred to you through Cycling Australia or friends or?
They are. Some of them come directly through Cycling Australia, and because Cycling Australia has advertised something, people have registered, and then they get sent to me, so to speak. But a lot of it is word of mouth. Yeah. And we're in Adelaide, and it's a small community, and I happily have been able to help some people in ways that have made them share that with their friends.
Yes.
And their friends come and ride with me, which is really cool.
So I am going to ask Margaret in 1 second about the benefits of engaging a coach. But before I do that, I'm just going to let you know about my personal experience with Margaret. So when I returned to Adelaide after living in Hong Kong for 11 years, where I didn't even own a bike, I wanted to get back into the sport of cycling. And as a lot of you would know, Adelaide is a great city for cycling. On one side of the city, there's a long flat coast, and on the other, there are hills. And if anyone's familiar with the Tour Down Under, you will have seen some of the beautiful cycling routes available in Adelaide. However, I was very nervous about getting back on my bike because I hadn't been on the road on a bike for at least 15 years, I think. So anyway, a mutual friend put me in touch with Margaret, and I'm so grateful. So thank you to Paul Bennett, if you're listening. So getting back on my bike with Margaret was really the best way to do it. She made me feel so safe. She gave me excellent practical tips. She pushed me physically, and I regained my confidence on the bike. So personally, I thoroughly recommend getting a cycling coach, whether you want to start, get back on your bike, or improve. But anyway, let's hear it from the experts. So Margaret, why should someone engage a cycling coach?
Well, first up, thank you very much for that feedback. Very much appreciated, and I really enjoyed riding with you. And I guess getting a coach is a decision which has a financial impact on your life. So it's got to have a real value. And the value that I know people get is it's someone to be accountable to, which is very helpful when you've got a personal goal. Someone to motivate you, support you, provide you with information which is vital to being safe and enjoying and doing well at the skill of cycling, or at the sport of cycling. And that's how I see myself as a coach, someone to provide all of those things. Almost certainly I become friendly and enjoy the company of the people I ride with. And I've been very fortunate to meet some amazingly interesting and beautiful people like yourself.
Oh, thank you, Margaret. Yeah, it's I think for me probably the biggest thing was the safety aspect, because that's a huge part of cycling. And having someone helping me, it just gives you confidence to know, for example, how to approach a roundabout correctly. And also how to ride in a group, because there are certain hand signals and things and commands that you call out, for example, if you're slowing down or stopping, to let everyone know. And that's a big part of being safe.
Yeah. And can I just add, I think there's also, apart from the risk management through the things you've just mentioned, there's also a real way of thinking about yourself as a road user.
Yes.
A sort of way that you communicate that I'm here too. I'm part of this road user community, and I want you to notice me. Which is really important.
Yeah, so Margaret's very big on hand signals and letting drivers know what you're doing, and that, I think that's really important too, obviously, and it reduces your risk of injury if other road users are aware of your intentions.
And you've got a presence on the road.
That's right. So I mentioned in the introduction that Margaret was a practicing lawyer for 23 years, but she has left the legal world in her dust. So Margaret, what prompted this career change?
Well, I had a serious accident on the bike in 2011. And as a result of the accident, I had quite a lot of time out of the legal world in hospital beds and rehab studios and the like. And I have recovered. But most significantly, I had a brain injury, a serious brain injury, which required me to relearn the whole walking, talking, looking after myself, and learn to ride again too. With that time out, once I got myself organised in the head, I started to think about how I want to live the rest of my life, and realised that my working life was really interesting and I really enjoyed being part of it, but it had taken over parts of my life that were important but I hadn't given enough attention to, like my family and other parts of my personal life. And at that stage, I wasn't as old as I am now, obviously. I still had time to get out there and do things. My mum and dad were still alive, for example, and I had the opportunity to make the decision and go and expand other parts of my life, which I'm very happy with, and I don't regret that decision at all.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that, Margaret. That's really inspiring, because I think as we become older, generally you do become more aware of the fragility of life.
Correct.
And, it's time to do what you really feel passionate about, and if you can turn that into a career, which Margaret has done, that's a great thing.
Yes, I am a very fortunate person, without a doubt.
Well, yes, you are indeed. You make the most of all your opportunities. So back to the coaching. Is there a particular person who has mentored or supported you along the journey?
Well, that's a good question, because I think I could name many people. I have to nominate my husband, Craig, who helped me through the brain injury stuff and helped me get back on the bike, and was able to subdue his fear that it was going to happen again, so I could get going again. But I also had the benefit of being part of the Skinny Lattes cycling club, where there are many beautiful women, and in particular there are a couple of women who I won't name them all because I might miss someone out. I know. But a couple of the people who've been around for a long time who were really important in helping me get back on the road, but also the group that Paul Bennett is a part of, Flat Riders Association, Power On, they're called.
Okay.
Another group, which is basically all men, except for a couple of women, were an important part of my rehab, getting back on the road as well. So they've definitely been part of it.
So were these people that you knew before your accident?
Yes, they were,
right.
very
so
much
they were supportive throughout the
to
whole
help me
process.
get back on and get going.
Yeah, and I think, hats off to Craig because my father had a cycling injury and his family, my mum, my sister and I, were all quite nervous about him getting back on the bike. Not necessarily encouraging it.
No, indeed.
Yes. So anyway, he's a bit older than you were when it happened to you, but it is a big thing, I think, getting back on your bike, not just for you personally, but for those who are involved in your life.
Yeah. And when you've had a brain injury, it's something that if you re-injure, just like a broken bone, it never really heals properly. So I do have to be careful.
Very careful.
Yes, which is another reason why I do time trialing.
Yeah, that's incredibly safe, isn't it?
It's you're by yourself. It's an individual event where you're on the road by yourself. Whereas in bunch racing and crit racing, you are, I wouldn't say at the mercy, but you're certainly much more at risk of other things happening right in your space.
Right, yeah. Yeah, when you do see a rider fall over in a pack, it has a pretty profound impact on everyone nearby, doesn't it?
Correct.
And Margaret, I believe another one of your mentors is David Parsons from the Ergo Cycling Fitness Studio. Can you tell us a bit about David?
Yeah, sure. David has been another important part of my cycling life. I coach indoors at Ergo Fitness Studio, and I've been part of the studio since it's first set up in 2014. And David has a really interesting history as a continental pro cyclist, as a very young man.
Yes.
And now he's coaching himself in the studio, and I help him out with that. And I've learned a lot from working with him about cycling, but also about technology. And all of the clients there spanned from everything from beginners to elite riders. So I've learned a lot working with the people who attend the studio too.
So what do people do in the studio? What's there?
Yep. So there are 6 stations where people bring their own bike usually, although you can borrow a shop bike, as we call it. And each bike goes on its own station with its own television in front, or a monitor in front, and everybody does their own workout. So 6 people could be in the room all doing very different workouts at a level of intensity which is relevant for them.
Yes.
Yeah, which is really an incredible arrangement and very important for ladies as well as elite cyclists.
And so what's the technology where do the workouts come from?
Yep, David uses Zwift, ZWIFT, which people have probably heard about.
Yes.
So all of the athletes who work in there, whether they're new beginner ladies or men, because we do have them too,
yes,
or elite athletes, they all have Zwift workouts working at a level of functional threshold power, which is something that's measured there, that is relevant to their body on the day they're in the studio.
Yeah, and I go there. I'm a huge fan. It's such a great way to get a very specific and safe workout.
Right. Yeah.
And David looks at my training plan on Training Peaks, so he can see what I need to work on, and he will pick a workout that is specific to my goals. So it's a great way, and it's also fun because there's a bit of banter going on, and when you perhaps get to a hard part of your workout, people encourage you a bit, and it's a really fun way.
It's like being in a cycling bunch, except you're all stationary, but you still encourage and support each other, which is really good. And there's a coffee shop there too.
There is, and also I love the fact that you're on your own bike as opposed to going to some gym with a sort of a non specific bike. So it's a really, really fun and challenging, I would say. It's never easy way to spend time on your bike. Yeah,
without the risk of all the road stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
And one thing I think a lot of our listeners will be interested in is fueling for a long ride. So, Margaret, can you give us some of your personal tips on that?
Yes, well, I think if I could say hydration and fueling, yes, because particularly in Adelaide, in the season where we all ride, which is kind of November, December, January, February, until it gets cold, it's really important to be hydrated beforehand and during. And I favour not just being hydrated, but having something in your water that provides you with some electrolytes and other additives that are just helpful. But just on hydration and food, I'd say you've got to play around and find out what works for you.
Absolutely.
Because everybody, and also it depends on your goal. I mean, if your goal is to do a 100k ride and last the distance, then you're going to eat and drink, well, not so much drink probably, but eat in a way that keeps you going for 100k's.
Yes.
But if you want to do the 100k's at 30k's an hour, you're going to be eating differently and at different times as you ride and before you ride.
Yes.
And even after you ride, I'm really interested in post-effort nutrition as well.
Yes, because there's a window within which you should consume protein and carbs to help with your recovery so you can do it again the next day. Yeah, so I'd say to people, if you've got a goal in mind, I'd say test out what you eat on that ride and before the ride well ahead of time on a ride that doesn't matter quite as much to you, so you can be sure that it works for you. Yeah, that I agree 100%. It's the same with endurance running. You need to test it out. For example, I have a friend who finds gels really hard to tolerate and they upset his stomach, whereas I love them. That's right. Which might put me in a minority. I think it might actually. They're very effective whether you like the taste or not. They really do work if you use them properly. Yeah. So anyway, my final question, which I will ask all my guests, if you could recommend 2 things that all people should do to improve their well-being, what would they be? Yes, well, the 2 things that I reckon up front, spend some time getting clear about what you stand for, what your values are, because that helps you determine your priorities in life and the choices that you're going to make as a result. And that's how you make a good life. Good choices, basically. That's only one thing, though. The second thing is the secret of getting ahead in life is just getting started and doing it every day, doing it bit by bit. Excellence is a habit, not an act. You just go every day, bit by bit. It all adds up, and before you know it, you've achieved a goal. Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's just not in cycling. I think that's in anything that you want to do well in your life. So thank you, Margaret. There is so much more to Margaret's story, but that's all we have time for today. If you want to connect with Margaret, the best way is to visit her website, firstprinciplescoaching.com.au, and I will put a link to that in the show notes. So, Margaret, thank you very much for being a guest on Amanda's Wellbeing Podcast. A pleasure. Thank you very much, Amanda. Bye for now. Bye. And that was Margaret Boylan. I think Margaret's clarity about what she does now and why she does it is part of the essence of living a good and meaningful life. Often it seems to take a massive life upheaval for people to pursue their passion. We can all get stuck. In any case, I find it inspiring to be around people like Margaret, and I hope you enjoyed our discussion. If you would like to contact me, you can send me a message via the contacts page on my website, www.amandaswellbeingpodcast.com. You can follow Amanda's Wellbeing Podcast on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and you can access direct links to all social media on the subscribe page. If you enjoy Amanda's Wellbeing Podcast, please take a minute to leave a rating on iTunes. It improves visibility and will help me source some excellent guests. Thank you for tuning in. Eat well, move well, think well.